is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go. Woo!
All right, gentlemen. It's Monday morning in the NFL. Black Monday isn't just reserved for the end of the regular season. It's also reserved for the day after playoff losses. Sean McDermott, come on down. And we'll get much more into that on Football Takes podcast and O-Line Committee. But I have a hot take question for you guys, and then we'll get into some of the latest Vikings news on this Monday. Shout out to Quick Trip to start our week here, Judd.
You know what? The National Football League, full of turmoil. You never know what you're going to get, right? Well, at Quick Trip, it's just the opposite. You know exactly what you're going to get, which is reliable service, friendly service, and also fantastic food. In fact, you know what? $6 breakfast combo available now, which is a breakfast sandwich, 2 packs of hash browns, and any size Kruba coffee or Big Buddy. There's the $7 lunch combo. There are countless options of favorite homemade meals as well. If you don't have dinner, you're driving home, you know what? Quick Trip is the place to stop. And if that gasoline tank, it's cold outside, folks. If that gasoline tank is anywhere near E, oh, no, don't you allow that to happen. Fill up quality gasoline guarantee at Quick Trip. Yep, that's right. They have you covered. They are reliable in an unreliable world.
It is a very unreliable world, yes. Also, the incoming, so our weekly hottest takes Monday shows presented by Standard Heating and Air Conditioning, and this incoming hot take question is too, Dex.
That's right. It is. What do we got here? -17 with wind chill right now in my backyard. -17. Luckily, my guy Cameron from Standard Heating and Air is coming out tomorrow to make sure everything is in working order. I think everything's in working order. We're not freezing inside this house yet, but this is the good time to make sure you're on top of it. It's going to be cold all week. You don't want to wait for your furnace to break down. Let the experts at Standard Heating come by and make sure that's working for you. We love that the Purple Daily audience has supported them in the past and continue to do so. They power our hottest takes. Join their Smart Club. You can get discount on repairs, priority bookings too. Go to contact Standard Heating and tell them that Purple Daily sent you.
All right. So this morning, Sean McDermott got fired. And we'll get way more into that. I'm sure on Football Takes, the O-Line Committee guys, the text thread lit up this morning. They're very upset and shocked about it. But I mean, you get it if you're Buffalo and you got Josh Allen. You've never been to a Super Bowl. It's probably the best 6-year run of any NFL team to not make it to a Super Bowl in terms of, like, they had 5 division titles and MVP quarterback. It's hard to see like what the next chess move is for the Bills if they do. So I get it from a Bills standpoint, but you now have a coaching carousel over the last 2 weeks that includes Sean McDermott, 8 playoff wins. I think it's a 98-50 record as a head coach. Helped develop, at least with his coaching staff and leadership, Josh Allen, right? 5 division titles. John Harbaugh was available there for about 2 weeks. Mike Tomlin technically still is available now, like if you wanted to trade for him. People are going to cringe at this, but Mike McCarthy is interviewing for the Pittsburgh Steelers job. You want to talk about like accomplished head coaches. That dude has 11 playoff wins, a Super Bowl title, 8 division titles over like a decade and a half. So my hot take question is, should the Vikings, even though it would have seemed crazy to entertain to most people, I think, firing Kevin O'Connell after one kind of down season where they did win their final 5 games, should they have entertained some of the coaches that were and are available in this coaching cycle?
I told you guys a couple of weeks ago when John Harbaugh was really, really shockingly let go by Baltimore that I would have entertained him. I would have made a phone call there. Like I really like him. I think he's really good. He comes from, if you go back to when he got the Ravens job, I think it was 2008 or so, he comes from a background as a special teams coordinator, so an overseer of things. I think he knows how to draw a team together. Now, we can argue about shelf life. I mean, my God, the guy lasted from 2008 to 2025. Tomlin, same thing.
Yeah.
So there probably comes a time when your time is up at a certain place, but that does not now make you a bad coach. Harbaugh is the one I would have entertained for sure. McDermott, I like. I'm intrigued by. Same with Tomlin. But like, if you're asking me, like, because it's a pretty inflammatory question of like, would you consider blowing out O'Connell with what 4 years left on his contract? I think he signed through 2029.
Yeah.
And he's done a nice job. Hasn't won a playoff game. Would you part with him? I will say this: the John Harbaugh one is the one where I think I would have said yes. So not the entire list. I'm not going to like, hey, Mike Tomlin, now I want you. Sean McDermott, oh, hold on a second. But on Harbaugh, my answer was yes.
I think I lean towards Judd. Harbaugh for sure. Like Harbaugh with a bullet, I think is the best of these four coaches that are just listed. Tomlin obviously has had a lot of success, but has ran into playoff failures and can get a roster to 500, but then hits a wall every time when the postseason kind of rolls around. And Sean McDermott, I guess if you know, if you had to rank them, I guess I give Sean McDermott maybe a little bit more of an edge to KOC, but I think it's pretty close-ish. It's Harbaugh for me. That's the one that would be, man. I know he's now going to the Giants, but I think that's the only one where I'd say, oh my God, I think you got to consider this.
So if I took the question back a step and said, all right, let's like put aside the hump of firing your current head coach who has a far and away winning record in the 4 years and has a 13 and a 14 win season. I get like on the surface the idea of, now there are some Vikings fans that are saying, oh, I don't care about that. He doesn't have a playoff win. So there are people that would be pounding on the table for this. But let's take the firing O'Connell thing off the table and let's look at it this way. If I gave you Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, Sean McDermott, Kevin O'Connell, how would you rank those four head coaches right now in today's NFL? Your confidence ranking that you got those four coaches, your confidence ranking that you can win at the highest level. You can win a division and you can make a playoff run.
I would put Harbaugh 1. I would probably put, although, again, I wouldn't have made this move, I would probably put Tomlin 2, O'Connell 3, and McDermott 4, and here's why. I want to see
4.
Yeah, but here's why. I want to see McDermott operate without a quarterback. So like I've got real questions there because McDermott gets a lot of credit, and I do think, I think in all of these cases we are talking about coaches that are really well respected by the players as well. So I think each of them can establish, to use the term, a culture, and I think each has, and that's a very important thing. But with McDermott, I would be curious to see because Josh Allen arrived in Buffalo. I don't want to say a hot mess, but certainly far from a finished product. And we know that Brian Dable did a really good job of developing him. And I'm sure McDermott played a role, but I don't know how much. So, like, let's say it's just the circumstances that the Vikings face right now. So I'm going to replace O'Connell, and the roster is the same, and it's McCarthy still. I'm not going to put McDermott above O'Connell for that purpose.
Really?
Nope. But I will
But you spent the entire last 6 months savaging Kevin O'Connell for not being able to work with JJ McCarthy.
Well, he didn't do a good job. But I don't know. But if you plot McDermott, and my guess is if he wants a coach, he's going to get a job. There's still 7 of them out there. Like, this changes a lot of things. But I would like to see him work with a quarterback, or what would he do with a quarterback who is not Josh Allen. But Tomlin, I have mad respect for Mike. So I would put him second, but I don't. But in my opinion, it wouldn't rise to the level of I'm blowing out the current coach for Tomlin. But just doing what you just said, I'd put him second.
Yeah, and again, I do respect how hard it would be to blow out Kevin O'Connell, but just for the record, and we'll go to Dex on this exercise.
Yep.
That's one of the three of us just went through this exercise, and you ranked Kevin O'Connell third among 4 coaches. 3 are or were available within the last 2 weeks. Interesting. On the McDermott front, real quick, I would add that when he took over that job, it was a year before Josh Allen arrived, and then they moved up to draft Josh Allen, and Josh Allen wasn't Josh Allen until year 3 of Josh Allen and year 4 of Sean McDermott. And McDermott deserves a ton of credit for, A, being a leader that can build that culture into what it's become, and B, identify an offensive staff that can get the most out of a raw, inaccurate, toolsy quarterback and maximize him into an MVP level, which is a step that we are waiting for. And now, I don't know that JJ. I know that JJ doesn't have the upside of a Josh Allen, but like, can we get him to play at a, like a consistent league average level? So McDermott deserves credit for building an infrastructure that allowed Josh Allen to get to where he was, and then they hit a glass ceiling, mostly called Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in the playoffs, etc. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I put McDermott ahead of KOC.
How would you rank the four then?
I would go Harbaugh, McDermott, KOC, Tomlin. I'm out on Tomlin. I'm out on Tomlin.
Okay.
I think he did an incredible job. Is there a case for Canton in there with what he did with the legacy franchise, winning a Super Bowl, winning to a couple Super Bowls, being one of the youngest head coaches when he was hired, and having a great career? But I think we're ramming our head against the wall if we're saying the same thing about, well, Tomlin could get them into a playoff run when, yes, he can raise the floor of a team, but then they just kind of hit their ceiling, and that's it, and then they're one and done every year, the last 7 years. McDermott, at least, he came from Carolina, was a DC, and in every year that Sean McDermott was a head coach, that defense, just from this current year and back, ranked 12th, 11th, 4th, 2nd, 1st, 16th, 2nd. That defense is really good, which is his calling card. And then he allowed the Dayballs of the world to mold into Josh Allen. And even though that roster, like this year especially, like, yeah, James Cook was a really good running back, but like that was Josh Allen carrying that team. And so I understand what Judd's trying to what he wants to see without a Josh Allen with Sean McDermott being the head coach, but I think he's a great delegator and I think he's a great leader. And even though, it's maybe some lip service stuff when he's at the podium, I generally like what he says. He seems to have his head on straight. He seems to really care about his players. So I would put McDermott over KOC if I was ranking them and if like I had my free pick of them. Like maybe another way to look at this question, because there's other teams that are looking for coaches right now. If the Vikings were in this exact same space, I would put Harbaugh and McDermott 1 and 2, even though I know Harbaugh just got hired by the Giants.
Like if all and I think obviously like everyone knows what I'm getting at here by posing these questions. That all right, it's a really rare coaching. So usually, like Ben Johnson was the number one coach on the market last year, and that panned out very well for the Bears in year one. But he had never done it before, so it was still a question of, is he a scheming coordinator guy or is he an actual leader that's going to get this team? And the answer was, at least for year one. Now Matt Nagy won 12 games with Mitch Trubisky once, and then went off. The Bears have seen this before, so it's got to play out. I think I'm in lockstep with Declan's rankings that if I go through this exercise, ranking those four coaches, number 1, John Harbaugh, number 2, Sean McDermott, number 3, Kevin O'Connell, with a ton of respect, number 4, Mike Tomlin, because people undersell what he's done the last like 5 years or 6 years. Someone went back and did the digging on football Twitter last week that if you take the last couple years of aging Ben Roethlisberger and then the next 3 or 4 years of the Russell Wilsons, the Mason Rudolphs, 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, these completely random, either over the hill or backup caliber quarterbacks, and Mike Tomlin went 68-48 with at least, I think he won one division, maybe 2 divisions in there, for sure won the division this year. So, like, okay, what happens if you give – this is where the Buffalo job being open is interesting, and I know Tomlin was maybe going to sit out a year and do TV, but if you're Tomlin and there's, like, a rock-solid quarterback, you can just have your Ben Roethlisberger again. That's good. Josh Allen's kind of a more athletic, modern Ben Roethlisberger. That becomes interesting, conversation for football takes. But I think KO is, at best, third on that list of 4 guys, which means all three of us in a coaching cycle where there are 3 available, and that's taking McCarthy out because people kind of laugh at him. But Mike McCarthy has a damn good pedigree too. If you're talking about pedigree and resume and history, Mike McCarthy is above Kevin O'Connell as well. But if we agree that he's not anywhere near number 1 on that list and all of these guys are available, then why isn't it more of a discussion in a rare? I'm not saying you do it every year when you have Kevin O'Connell, but whoa. This is a rare opportunity here, and we missed one of them because Harbaugh didn't He just went to the Giants because they flirted with him first, basically. Should it not have been more of a conversation? Should it not be? If we all think that like McDermott is going to get snatched up right away, and I think all of us would rank him above KO in a coaching pecking order right now, then why isn't it more of a discussion?
Well, I think you have to ask yourself the question of, is it a discussion behind the scenes? Because if the Wilfs just talk about it, it's not going to leak out unless it's leaked out on purpose. And if I was the Wilfs, I sure as hell wouldn't want that out there. So we don't know that they didn't discuss it. It's a tough predicament for them because this guy's won a bunch of games. He has not won a playoff game. For the most part, he's done a good job. This year there were red flags. So I get the conundrum that they face on Tomlin too. I think he's in for, if he wants it, a second act that's going to be great. Like I think he's going to spend, he had a ton of success in Pittsburgh. At the end of it, or the last several years, the playoff success certainly dried up. But I think he's in for a second act that's going to be really impressive. This guy to me is like, if you were to mold a head coach, he's got a lot of the attributes. But that being said, I wonder if it has been discussed and perhaps dismissed. But at the end of the day, the Schefters of the world aren't going to get that. Like if you just discuss it internally. Now, if you start to call agents, so I guess what you could say is, why didn't they call agents about this? But Harbaugh is the only one that personally I would have just done it for. Mm-hmm. So like if it's McDermott or Tomlin, I like them. KOC might rank third, but if I'm going to blow out my current coach, Harbaugh's my one guy.
Yeah.
And he was a lot of teams' one. I am curious now though to see what McDermott being fired does to this entire cycle, because 2 jobs are filled, 7 jobs are open, and I got to think that some people that had a chance at jobs previously might lose out now to Sean McDermott.
Yeah. By the
Brian
way,
Flores.
Vikings fans on Twitter, I did put this poll up. Where does Kevin O'Connell rank among these coaches? KOC, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, Sean McDermott. 12% say first, that he'd be the number one on that pile. 14% said he'd be second. 36% said he'd be third, which is where we put him. But the majority, 38%, said he'd rank fourth on that list, which is not an unreasonable opinion. Because if you stack the resumes of all of these, it's not close. If you put Kevin O'Connell anywhere but fourth on that list, you're doing it based off of projection. That going forward, his resume will continue to grow and he'll win a playoff game or 8 at some point, like these guys all have. So, just a little hot take on a Monday here for you guys. Food for thought.
Flamethrower. I also think no matter what we all think or what the public does of O'Connell, I also think he needs, or he deserves, an opportunity to show that he can improve upon what we didn't like about his job this season. Like he's still a young guy. He's 40-ish, so he should be maturing as a coach as well. So it's just a very difficult situation, and there's a very small group of people that I would just walk in and say, Kevin, I'm very, very sorry. Here's a huge check. Now go away.
I think I am very curious to see how he bounces back in year 5, because he's not actually going anywhere, and I'm curious, depending on to what extent they panic, or if they go big game hunting, different story. Maybe they panic and replace JJ McCarthy with Mac Jones or whatever. But I'm still curious to see what a 23-year-old JJ McCarthy looks like. Yeah. Let's get into some latest Vikings news here, boys.
Latest Vikings news.
Starting with a couple days ago, the Vikings news came out that they are not renewing the contract of offensive line coach Chris Cooper. Interesting. So, Judd, you put out a couple of replacement candidates. Would love to hear you expand on those thoughts. But I think the 2 biggest questions here are, how much do offensive line coaches matter in the NFL? And how important is the replacement for offensive line coach Chris Cooper for the advancement of the 28th ranked offense and I think scoring and yardage somewhere around there too?
It's my humble opinion that the offensive line coach, save for the coordinators, is one of the most important position coaches that there is. because it's a massive job. Like you're not in charge of, hey, here's my group of wide receivers, or here's my running back or 2 or 3. You're in charge of essentially coordinating an entire line. And Chris Cooper had some definite hurdles. I believe that the projected offensive line that the Vikings thought that they had in place, especially with the 3 internal guys being brought in new, I think their total snap count as a unit was something like 86. It's ridiculously
It was
low.
like 8% of the
so
snaps, yes.
so that is tough. But here's where I think his bed was made partially. I think when you go and you see Garrett Bradbury goes to the Patriots and shows improvement. I think when you see Ed Ingram goes to the Texans and shows improvement. And now I went through the grades. The level of improvement's not exactly through the roof, but it is improvement. Ezra Cleveland has gone to Jacksonville and stabilized into a really good guard. Hell, Dalton Reisner went to the Bengals and improved. And I think that's where you come back and you raise an eyebrow and you say, what's going on here? And Chris Cooper was a guy that we talked about occasionally during the season. I think if there was a position coach that we consider to be on the proverbial hot seat, it was him. I think not renewing his contract was probably fair. And the Vikings need to, if nothing else, here's my thing. So I'm willing to blame Kwesi for the drafts a lot, okay? They've not been good. But I do have a question in the back of my mind, which is, what's the development like? What's the development of players like? Why aren't more guys developing? Is that all Kwesi screwed the pooch and took the wrong advice? Or is that a combination of, yeah, he didn't do great, but you know what? That offensive line, there's a lot of guys that aren't necessarily developing at the rate that one would expect. And you saw it again in the divisional round. You see all these young guys, right? And they're being thrown in, and they might not be perfect, but they're contributing, and they're not liabilities. And so I think that's where Chris Cooper's ultimate the decision came from, which is, where's the overall improvement on a consistent basis of guys?
Yeah, and it's hard. It's because I think, like, in terms of the importance of offensive line coaches, probably not as much as people think. Just like kind of hitting coaches in Major League Baseball, you know, they're there and they can provide support and they help with some of the schematic things in communication. Talent is probably the most important factor. But where I will highlight something is a lot of offensive line coaches in the NFL are also run game coordinators by name, or even if not, like in their actual title,
Well,
it's one of their main jobs.
yes, and this is interesting. Yes.
And if you're this is just kind of speculation here, I guess, but the Vikings running game has either been bad or they have not used it at a high enough volume to take pressure off the offensive line and pass protection. And some of these young and experienced quarterbacks. So why is that? Is that purely Kevin O'Connell's want and philosophy, or does he not feel like he can trust the run blocking at scale and volume compared to some of the other teams? Therefore, sorry, Chris Cooper, I'm kind of wondering how you sharpen that part of the knife.
Which brings us to the next question, which is, who's next? So Mike Pettin, assistant head coach, retired, or was told, hey, you know what? You look tired, buddy boy.
The youngest retirement in football coaches.
That's exactly right. I'm done. I'm done with football.
Yeah.
I'm done with football. But the interesting thing is, so the Vikings run game coordinator is actually the running backs coach, Curtis Motkins. And I thought the exact same thing that you did, which is, yeah, that lots of times is the offensive line coach. And I hope Curtis does not lose his job. I'm sure he's a great guy. But all of that being said, it did occur to me that he could be in some trouble. And I would not be surprised at all if that's the case, if the next offensive line coach gets the run game coordinator title as well.
Okay, so 2 names. I'll throw one out and then I'll tee you up for the other one here. But Alec Lewis from The Athletic connected a couple dots. So Kevin Stefanski officially took the Falcons head coaching job over the weekend. And there's a report that he's going to hire OG offensive line guy Bill Callahan to come over to Atlanta and be his offensive line coach, which would leave their current offensive line coach, Dwayne Ledford, looking for a job. And as Alec Lewis connected the dots here, He said Falcons offensive line coach Dwayne Ledford is one of the premium available coaches on the market for teams like the Vikings, highly respected in the industry. So, yeah, Ledford played 8 years in the NFL as a center, then got into coaching. He's been the Falcons offensive line coach for 5 seasons and their run game coordinator for the past 2 seasons. The Falcons have lived in the top 10 as a rushing offense the last 4 years. Since 2022, if you take the 4 years in total, the Falcons are 7th in the NFL in rushing success rate. And that's not with like a Lamar Jackson helping as a cherry on top or a Jalen Hurts. Some of the other teams you see in there, they've got the mobile quarterback that is running the ball, 8-10 times a game and helping kind of pad your rushing stats. The Falcons' run game is, you got to find a stud running back. The last 2 years, it helps to have Bijan Robinson.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, but even before that, they were still like in the 2 years previous to that, they were still one of the better running teams in the NFL. So there's a guy like him sitting out there if you felt compelled. And then you tossed out the name Mike Munchak, who is he was a Hall of Fame offensive lineman as a player and like a 25 or 30 year offensive line coach in the league, a long time with Tennessee. He was a head coach for a minute.
Yep.
And he hasn't been a position coach in a couple years, but he's an OG guy out there that not many guys have more experience than Mike Munchak.
So Mike Munchak was the O-line coach for the Titans from, get this, 97 to 2010. Then he went to the Steelers from 2014 to 18 and the Broncos from 2019 to 21. He has not been a full-time assistant since then. But here's what piqued my curiosity. So he's going to be 66 in March. But what piqued my curiosity about Mike Munchak was he was actually a offensive line consultant for the Rams and Sean McVay in 2023 and 24. He was a training camp consultant for the Jaguars last summer. But I thought that the McVay tie-in was intriguing. So like O'Connell, and I do think that, there's a lot of times that O-line coaches are sort of old, crusty dudes because they've seen it all and they've done it all. And so the tie-in with McVay and the Rams, assuming that worked well, did pique my curiosity on would O'Connell make a call there and tried to get in a guy who's had a lot of success. Like you said, he was the head coach of the Titans very briefly, but just trying to put the dots together and to see what direction. He strikes me as a guy that you would make a phone call to, especially if you call McVay and he's like, yeah, I loved him. I think that would probably help if he wants a coach again.
Yeah.
Latest Vikings news.
Got to get into the Sam Darnold. People want us to talk about Sam Darnold advancing to the NFC Championship game, and so we can dive into that conversation here. Mystic Lake powering latest Vikings news on today's episode.
They definitely are. And folks, if you think that you can't stay, dine, and unwind all in one place, you know what Sports Dad has? News for you, because you're inaccurate. At Mystic Lake, it all starts on the floor. The rush of the energy with the table games and also the hot slots. An unforgettable night with the stars in the Mystic Showroom. And then let me tell you about the Hop House, because you're looking at it right now. Hop House, I mean, my God, the amount of TVs, the amount of sports on, it's perfect. What could be more perfect? Add a cold beer and some great apps. Well, you get that at the Hop House too. You stay there and guess what? You unwind in the spa. See? It's all in one place. It's at Mystic Lake. Book your getaway today at mysticlake.com.
Or if either you don't go to Mystic, which you should, you're just hanging out at home for the night. Maybe a Legit Pizza could be your wind down for the night here. Legit Pizza, Pep's Legit Pizzas, which you can find in the frozen section of your grocery store, is the culmination of 100 years of family recipes. If you are a pizza fanatic, then you're going to love Pep's Legit Pizza with the ultra-thin stone-baked crust, the crispy cracker crust so thin it snaps, and I can vouch for that too. Definitely has that snapping quality. Zesty, robust sauce, whole milk, mozzarella, and incredible toppings as well. So find Pep's Legit Pizza in a grocery store freezer section near you. And then a shout-out to Federated Insurance too. Federated's been around for over 100 years, helping small to medium-sized businesses, the backbone of America, all across the country, even though they've been based in Minnesota, Owatonna, Minnesota. for over 100 years. They now have a footprint all across the 50 states. So if you are a small or medium-sized business, or maybe you are a next-generation business owner, took over a family business recently, Federated can provide great, valuable guidance for you and your company. Find out more at federatedinsurance.com, where it's our business to protect yours.
Anybody got any Vikings news?
Yes, we do, Judd. Sam Darnold. You remember him. You know, he was the quarterback for the Vikings in 2024. That guy threw for like 4,000 yards, bunch of touchdowns. So Darnold and the Seahawks advanced to the NFC Championship game over the weekend in a blowout win over the 49ers. How does this reflect on the Vikings? Now that we've seen it, it's no longer a theory. A Sam Darnold-led team is on the doorstep. They're going to play a home NFC Championship game.
Yep.
I think they might be favored this morning. Haven't checked the latest lines.
Oh,
but how does this reflect on the Vikings?
It reflects very poorly, but not in the fact that they didn't re-sign him. It reflects very poorly on how they used him in those last two games. Seattle is not relying on him to carry the load completely. Seattle is, as we talked about, a team that runs the ball, a team that relies on Sam to do what they need, but what they need is not the complete platter. They need him to do what he is basically asked to do. If there's a pie chart of distribution of responsibility, that pie chart with Sam as a Viking would have been massive. With Seattle, it's not as big. This is a credit to him. I'm telling you, in retrospect, he signed in the exact right place. Because if the question is, as we watch this, well, if the Vikings had kept Sam Darnold, they'd be here. They could be here right now. They wouldn't. They wouldn't be here because they would have relied on him to do way too much, and that would have been a problem. And more now, those last two games, especially Detroit, are a reflection of Kevin O'Connell not having a run game. They're a reflection of the fact that he didn't want to run. They're a reflection of the fact that he took a guy. I mean, it's like the Seahawks signed Sam and said, okay, we know what you can do well. And they're allowing him to, and he's doing it. The Vikings said, hold on a second here. You're slinging Sammy now. And he's like, not all the time. And they're like, no, you are. So I think it's ridiculous to think, well, the Vikings made a huge mistake because they would be headed towards the NFC title game. If they did what Seattle has done, yes, there's a chance. But this to me is not an apples to apples comparison because if you plant Sam back here, I think you have some of the same problems. I mean, the way that the Seahawks, now that you watch their games, the entire thing, what the Seahawks are doing to me is exactly right, which is we're not going to rely on you for everything. We're going to rely on you to, and I know it's a dreaded term, we're going to rely on you to manage the game properly. And he's done that. And kudos to Sam. Kudos.
So what you're saying is Seattle is a lot like one of our favorite restaurants, Butcher and the Boar. It's a bunch of small plates. It's a bunch of great items, and we don't have to jam the Sam Darnold down our restaurant's throat because we actually have a lot of great little small plates here that make up a collection of a really good meal. It is interesting watching Darnold just because they're not. I mean, look at the last 2 games, I should say, because he had a bye going in to the playoffs. 124 yards against San Francisco in the divisional round, 198 yards, and looked like he was melting down after that first failed attempt. They're not asking him to be Superman. And by the way, like Darnold does have ability to push the ball down the field, a lot better and bigger arm than maybe people originally thought before going into last season when we showed it off with the Vikings. They're asking him to manage the game, and I'm a Judd. I quarterback manager or managing the game is this kind of taboo term for quarterbacks, but that team in Seattle doesn't need him to be Superman. He just needs to not crash the car. I mean, look at what happened with Houston, and we'll have football takes with Thor, which I'm super excited to talk about after divisional round. But that Houston defense is so damn good. They were forcing turnovers. C.J. Stroud, don't crap your pants, and he had to change his pants after every possession. So Darnold and the Seahawks, it's crazy. Yeah, they're a game away from going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I've got the data on some of this, like to what you guys are saying. I mean, it's basically as the last two seasons have gone into deeper waters for both the Vikings last year and the Seahawks this year. So like December and January football where pressure ramps up, you're facing the better teams, you're fighting for division, for seeding, playoff wins, all these things. And through that, December into January, the Vikings a year ago asked Darnold to ratchet up. Hey, dude, we're going to put more on your plate. As the pressure gets a little higher, we're going to ask you to do more and carry us more. The Seahawks have asked him to do less, to your point, and here's the data. With the Vikings, up until the middle of December last year, Darnold didn't attempt 40 passes in a game until December 16th. And then so starting on that date, they had 5 games going forward. He averaged 40 passes per game from that point going forward. 5 of his highest 6 volume throwing games were December 16th or later. The Seahawks, the last 3 games, he's thrown the ball an average of 23 times a game. Basically half the pass attempts that the Vikings asked him to as the season ramped up. On the season, if you take the whole season, like all 18 weeks and then playoffs, the Seahawks have the second highest run percentage of any team in the NFL. The only team that ran the ball at a higher rate than the Seahawks was the Baltimore Ravens. And they have a cheat code because their quarterback is running a lot more than Seattle's quarterback. So if it's just like pure called runs, no team calls more run plays if you take away quarterback scrambles than the Seattle Seahawks. Helps when you're winning. Game flow, you can run the ball more. I acknowledge that. But Seattle is leading with defense and run game. I think like the best way I can crystallize it is, and this is to Judd's point, Kevin O'Connell looked at and looks at Sam Darnold and says, that is the savior. Like, I can ride that guy the way I want to run my offense. And the Seahawks look at Darnold and say, he is a cog in our machine, which is led by defense and running game. And we're going to ask him, you can't win a Super Bowl without him making some plays. But if you look at his numbers, too, since like the middle of the year, I think he has like a 10 touchdown, 9 interception ratio going back like 2 months. And they've said, all right, we're not going to let you go blue screen of death totally here. We're going to rein you in, and you're going to be a cog in our machine here. So I think there's a lot of just like bad faith actors trying to look, they're trying to take us back 12 months ago and explain that the Vikings made an epic mistake, that this was an obvious first guess. But if you look at the information at hand 12 months ago, and then you look at the way, to your point, that the Seahawks have taken the information that the Vikings kind of choked on in weeks 18 and playoffs, and then wove it into their equation of, okay, let's bring him in, but he's not going to be the centerpiece of this whole thing. We're going to bring him in and do it in a different way. 12 months ago, it was very coin flippy. It doesn't look coin flippy now because like Darnold had a really good year. He was in a great system. They ran the ball more often, and J.J. McCarthy fell on his face with injuries and bad play at the beginning of the year, right? But like, where were we 12 months ago? Darnold went blue screen of death in the 2 biggest games of the year after having conservatively 3 similar games in the regular season. So that's of his like 18 games, 5 of them were, whoa, red flag. This is bad. The Jets game, Jacksonville, the first half against the Colts with turnovers. They didn't score a point in that first half against the Colts. So you're the Vikings, and you really like what he did, and it was a pleasant surprise. You have 18 games of sample because the previous 6 years were also a train wreck. And in 30% of those 18 games, he was pretty, like, not pretty bad, but like maybe game-wreckingly bad. And you got this first-round pick that's waiting in the wings that you're optimistic about. So, like, with the information at hand, it was coin flippy. And maybe they flipped the coin and it landed wrong. And also maybe they should have done things differently to insulate him going into the playoffs. Maybe they could have re-signed him and insulated him like the Seahawks did. But, you know, they didn't. And I don't think they would, because Kevin O'Connell is now completely talking about wanting to get back to the things that they do offensively in the way that he wants to.
But you know what? Sam has turned his career around. That's awesome. But the reality is, if you plopped him back here right now, they win more games. They probably make the playoffs. Do I think that they go to the NFC title game with that Sam? No. Like, and the game flow thing. Let's go back to the Detroit game. That game flow was fine. They didn't fall behind by a ton. They had every chance. They basically got into the red zone and said, we're going to pass. And Sam's like, we are? And they said, no, we're going to pass. And that game was close. And just in retrospect, the only thing I regret about my hot takes or my opinions is I should have questioned O'Connell more at the time.
Well, you did a lot. Like, we argued about that.
Well,
and
but that was the
questioned.
Rams game more, and I did. But I'm saying that Detroit game now to me is the poster child game. Like you put Mike McDonald and Clint Kubiak on the Vikings sideline for that Detroit game, or O'Connell calling plays. It's a very different game. It's a very different game. And are you just telling me, like, here's what I don't like. We can debate the offensive line. Chris Cooper's gone now. But what I don't like is this. Well, the run game didn't work. We tried it twice. You guys watch these games. You got to pound the rock, man. It don't come on like, oh, if we don't get a 25-yard gain on our second carry, we have to abort mission. Yeah. Like football's not supposed to be attractive necessarily. And yet what the Vikings did, and this is why I'm glad for Sam, what the Vikings did with Sam in no way, shape, or form was going to get him to his ultimate goal. It was statistically great, but it wasn't, what he is in now gets him there. He signed in the exact right place. And I wouldn't be surprised in retrospect now, this wouldn't come out. But if he got some advice too of, hey, you know what? Seattle fits you way better, buddy.
Yeah, I just thinking back to that game and verifying here, I pulled up the box score. So that game against Detroit it ended 31-9. Like, oh, they got their ass kicked.
They didn't.
No, they were down 10-9 at like the 2.5-minute mark of the third quarter.
Yep. And
then Detroit went in, scored a touchdown to make it 17-9 going into the fourth quarter. So like it was a 1-point game at the end of the third quarter, and then it was an 8-point game going into the fourth quarter. And Darnold wound up 18 of 41 for $166. It was one of the worst quarterback games we've seen. And he didn't throw a bunch of picks, but like in terms of lack of completions and just like not seeing what he's looking at. Meanwhile, they ran the ball, not counting the 3 Sam Darnold scrambles, 16 times for 110 yards with Cam Akers and Aaron Jones in the backfield. And it's that inability to just take your medicine, be conservative. And dude, you know what? You know who almost did it or tried to do it yesterday? Sean McVay. They completely aborted mission for like an hour on their running game while Chicago got chance after chance. And I don't know what it did. Now McVay, to his credit, like big picture the last few years, has really leaned more into, and he has Matthew Stafford at quarterback. But, bro, it's below zero. Your quarterback is old. Your running game is hitting pretty well. Just lean into it. And I don't know what it is about that coaching tree. Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. And I get you got Joe Burrow. He's a great shiny toy. No team percentage-wise passes the ball more than Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. Well, because they got these receivers in Joe Burrow, and that's great. But, like, there is still a ton of value, even for your offensive line. I think if you were to ask the Vikings offensive line, how hard is it when you operate at that high of a passing percentage to continue to pass protect, snap after snap after snap, Week 18 against the Lions, playoffs against the Rams on the road? I think those guys are in the huddle saying to themselves, if not just internally, maybe even out loud, can we just call a couple run plays here and just lean forward and push these guys around? So, yeah, that Detroit game, I thought a couple things. I thought, one, Sam Darnold, dude, you got it. This is year 7 for you in the NFL. You're a veteran in both those games. Stop sailing passes out of the back of the end zone. And I do believe that he deserved criticism for that. But Judd was way more on it when it came to Kevin O'Connell's stubbornness in those games, and then how that carried forward into the J.J. McCarthy era too. He adjusted the last 5 or 6 weeks, but now sounds like a guy that doesn't want to have to make that concession in 2026. And if all this organization is doing is placating to this passing extreme offense that has shown zero ability to win playoff games doing it that way, it's going to continue to raise questions for me.
Yeah.
And I think in that Detroit debacle to end the season last year, I believe, was it 12 goal-to-go plays for the Vikings in the deep red, and I think they did kick a field goal. Well, they kicked a field goal a couple times, but
They did.
they had 12 goal to go situations, and none of them resulted. Not a single play resulted at least in 6 points and a touchdown.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, like if you're Darnold, dude, complete a pass to one of your open targets, and that game turns out differently.
But my problem is now, in retrospect, too, though, you had seen him, to use your term, Phil, go blue screen of death. Like you knew what was happening. It wasn't like this, oh my God, I've never seen this before. What's going on here? It was something that he's done before. And so as a coach, I think it's your job to solve it or at least help him, right? The thing, too, is that game, in retrospect now, since we're talking about it, that game was for the top seed. You know what an advantage the top seed is now? You get a week off, and you are 2 wins away from a Super Bowl instead of 3 wins. And the other thing, too, about that game is the defense got tired. You know why? Because you were passing the ball constantly and stopping the clock, and not in Detroit, where you should eat up clock as much as possible. So, yeah, that game now, if you unpack it, that's the only thing that frustrates me is this thought of, well, they made a mistake in not signing Darnold because we would be at the same place that the Seahawks are. And I don't agree with that.
Yeah, they would only be at the same place if Darnold could sort of level up and, all right, we're going to put more on your plate and you're going to handle it this time, which I guess there's a possibility. Or B, the head coach can meet Darnold play calling wise where he's at, which the Seahawks did, and they can have more of a balanced, if not run heavy attack. Because you could argue that both teams have pretty similar defense. Like both teams were leading with defense in a lot of ways. 2 of the 4 best defenses in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And the difference offensively was one offense. And again, it helps to have leads. Having leads makes it so that you're probably going to run the ball more in the second half. And I will acknowledge that. But even if you strip away some of that, the gap between what the Seahawks were doing offensively and what the Vikings were trying to do up until the first part of December is very different. It's very different. Another thing here, we should at least throw this out before we...
So much Vikings news.
Brian Flores. So Brian Flores is getting a second interview with the Pittsburgh Steelers tomorrow, according to Mary Kay Cabot from the Cleveland Plain Dealer, right? So she's
Cleveland.com, I guess, now, but yes.
Yeah, okay. So he's essentially a finalist for the Pittsburgh Steelers head coaching job, Brian Flores.
So to go back to what I said beforehand, I do have a question. What does the entry of Sean McDermott into the coaching pool now? I assume he ain't going to take a year off. Like he's good at what he does. He's really good. What does that do? Like if you're Pittsburgh, don't you now say, hold on a second here a little bit, huh? Sean McDermott's out there?
Yeah.
Like I don't ever remember, and we have had firings before where there's a lot of jobs, but I don't ever remember a coaching cycle being thrown into this much flux. Matt LaFleur, at least there was discussion. He was gone. Now he signed an extension, so he's fine. But the fact is, Brian Flores, now if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm not out on Flores, but I definitely am going to sniff around because I could see McDermott having, that guy was in Buffalo for a long time. Pittsburgh definitely wants to hire a coach, Chuck Nolan, 69, Cowher in 92, and then Tomlin in 2007. Pittsburgh has a history of hiring a coach who sticks around for a long time. This could be McDermott's last job. So I think it's great that Flores is in the mix very firmly in Pittsburgh. He also, I've not seen that Baltimore has started to do a second round yet. He obviously talked to them as well. There are some that think that the Raiders are still going to come calling in their second round to talk to Flores. But all of that being said, I think this thing is in flux again because somebody is going to make a phone call, or a lot of somebody's, on Sean McDermott.
Yeah. I've got a thought actually on. There's a nugget about Sean McDermott that could be a connection, but we'll save that for Football Takes. If you haven't already checked out our Football Takes podcast, check it out. Score North Football Takes on YouTube. Before we get to one more item here that I think, especially because this guy was maybe even leveraging a new career path this weekend on national TV, but we'll get to some quarterback speculation here in a second, presented in part by Roku, gentlemen. So Roku is the TV for watching football in the Mackey household, the official TV of Purple Daily football viewing here. And if you haven't checked out the Roku channel, you're missing out on a ton of free TV channels, hit series, documentaries, movies, etc. We've talked about the ability to turn your TV into a digital art gallery, or in our case, a logo gallery with the Score North logo back here. With the Backdrops app, browse famous artists, photographers, upload your own personal photos as well. Better and, dare I say, more versatile TV for everyone with Roku, America's #1 streaming platform. Go to Roku.com to learn more. And the Upper Midwest biggest boat sale is coming to town here soon, with hundreds of boats, leading brands, and unbeatable deals coming to the Minneapolis Convention Center. Discover Boating Minneapolis Boat Show in partnership with Progressive at the Minneapolis Convention Center this Thursday through Sunday, all weekend long. Shop and compare hundreds of boats and exhibitors under one roof and take advantage of boat show pricing, and stay warm because it's going to be really cold. So anything you can do to think about and dream about summer on the lake here in the Twin Cities. Free admission for kids age 12 and younger with adult admission. No better place to see and buy new 2026 boats. The Discover Boating Minneapolis Boat Show in partnership with Progressive. So Stefanski took that Falcons job, and I saw some questions to us over the weekend on Twitter about, okay, like you guys have kind of pegged Kirk Cousins as a high percentage chance to return to the Vikings after he gets cut, but wouldn't it make sense maybe for Kirk to just stay in Atlanta? Because him and Stefanski, basically Stefanski's head coaching career took off the back of that OC season in Minnesota in 2019, right? They won a playoff game, and Kirk was spectacular for the most part. So the way that the Falcons tweaked his contract makes it almost impossible for him to just stay in Atlanta on the current contract. So what they did was, I don't know if we have fully explained this, but they like agreed with Kirk on, like, hey, can we tweak your current contract? And I don't know if it was like fully fleshed out to the public like what they did, but they essentially moved a bunch of his guaranteed or his base salary money into 2027 and moved up the cut date. So like if the Falcons have to cut Kirk by March 13th, or his 2027 salary becomes fully guaranteed on that date. So like if he's still on the Falcons team on March 13th, his 2027 $67 million base salary is guaranteed. So what it's saying is Kirk's camp is saying to the Falcons, cut me by March 13th. And the Falcons, what they're doing by moving this money back, and the cap hit is they're going to have to swallow like $35 million in accounting anyways. They get cap relief for the March free agency season. So that was kind of the agreement. The only way Kirk would go back to the Falcons and play it out with Stefanski again is if the Falcons cut him and then re-signed him to a new deal. So almost certainly by March 13th, Kirk is going to be a free agent. But was he also potentially negotiating a TV career this weekend on CBS? Doing pretty well on the pregame show.
He's pretty good. And he's proven at the podium that he explains football really well.
Yeah.
And also as a studio guy, like I think for a game analyst, I'm not sure, because he explains things a lot. I'm not saying he couldn't, but he just feels like a really good studio fit, which he was on Saturday on CBS. But Kirk is such a genius. I tweeted this possibility. So if and when he gets let go by the Falcons, which I fully expect, he will get interest from teams. Now, is it going to be at the price point that he is used to? Absolutely not. But he's at an age where he could say, and I could see CBS saying, dude, you're really good. You know what? Matt Ryan's job is yours if you want that. Mm-hmm. And television pays pretty well. But more importantly, television also provides do I really want to play football for you when I could do this? It's another negotiating ploy. And you know what? At this point, I'm not angry. I'm not upset about it. Bravo. It's unbelievable. This guy finds, because, if 2 or 3 teams call, right? And they were his only options. Like in life. Like it's okay, you can retire if you want, I guess. But Kirk's like, I don't really want to retire, but I could do this TV job. And the team's like, no, come and play for us. Like the Vikings. I just think, and I'm not saying it's going to get him $35 million, but I do think does it not continue just the genius negotiation of leaving doors open? I mean, Kirk Cousins, I will continue to pound this until I'm dead, belongs in Canton as a negotiator.
Yeah, I agree. It is he finds new creative ways to heighten his leverage. He would be awesome in that role.
He is good.
Pre-game. He would be awesome. I still think he is the odds-on favorite to be the second quarterback in that room next to J.J. McCarthy, and then
I agree.
See what happens when he's also a guy that you could bring in here, and you wouldn't have to give him a ton of first-team reps for him to like be ready to operate the system. So you could kind of cheat the system and bring in a guy that if you needed him to be QB1 from week 1 for whatever reason, he could step in. He knows everything. But you could still give J.J. McCarthy a ton of first-team reps to further his development throughout the summer. But to your point, I wonder if the price for that went from how about 8 or 10 million to it's going to have to be closer to 20.
Or I'm done.
Or CBS, and the CBS lapel is going to be my future.
He's got a future there, so there's no question. And it is amazing that, and I guess I sort of respect this, but it's amazing that a guy who, like, his last day of playing could be the last time you ever see him, right? Like he's got more money than he knows what to do with, and his family and his relatives for years are set up. But
I mean, Tom Brady's the same way, and Tom Brady decided,
you're right.
Not only do I want to do this broadcasting at the highest level,
but I want to own a
and make
team,
the most money. I want to fix the Raiders.
Own part of a team, yeah. But I guess I respect that too, though.
Yeah, dude. I mean, people like, well, I would just do nothing. Really? You're like 40 years old and you would just do nothing for the next 40 years? No, these are like driven, egocentric personalities that want to dominate different fields.
The one thing Kirk has always been really good about, he did it again, I think, with a peer progression topic at the podium with Falcons this year. But he did it with the Vikings. If you just ask him football-y questions, he's great. He'll just stand there and tell you, and it's not, it's not like BS. It's real game planning stuff. So I think I think the day that he retires, if he wants to be a studio guy, I think he's going to have options.
Can we get a better tie? Julie, I know Julie dresses Kirk, but the green suit coat and that like weird 90s brown, large, wide tie. Can we get a better suit to tie combo ratio there?
That's saying. Kirk Cousins, man.
I was hoping he would just show up in like one of those Kohl's button-up short sleeve shirts.
At that point,
maybe a Great Clips T-shirt
with the Great Clips,
or no shirt with the chains,
with the chains,
just casually sitting there, shirtless with his chains. So just with Stefanski getting that job, just wanted to clarify what may happen there with his contract. He's going to get cut before March 13th.
Yeah.
And by the way, it can't really be a trade either, because if somebody were to trade for him before March 13th, they would then, I think, have to take on that $67 million. I think that would still become guaranteed for 2027. So no matter what, he's going to hit the market.
And if he did go back there on a new contract, I think part of the problem too is like at some point in time here, Michael Penix is going to come back. So if Michael Penix comes back and Kirk's playing well, now you got a real, like, is Penix just a backup, which is sort of weird too. So
isn't that the same thing that he's walking into here, though?
I think Penix has a lot more unknown, though, upside. Like, I think with McCarthy, there's more genuine concern. I think with Penix, my guess is that Stefanski has convinced them that he can, if not fix him, that he can definitely coach him. So I think it's
Penix,
a different
Penix, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
With Penix, I think it's a different thing. I think it's a conversation about a new coach taking on a quarterback. He's known as a quarterback guy. Stefanski is. So I feel like it's a different discussion. And I mean, I don't know. It just seems a lot for Kirk. Kirk wants to come back here. You know he does.
Does he? The question would be: does he want to come back here more than he wants to have a guaranteed starting job? Because there's some teams out there that aren't really in. I mean, like the Steelers. The Steelers are
Yeah,
drafting.
they were out there last year.
The 2 quarterbacks are going to be off the board long before the Steelers can get up there. Aaron Rodgers, it sounds like, is not going to come back unless, I mean, if Mike McCarthy gets that job, him and Aaron Rodgers had a huge fallout, right?
That'd got to be good theater, though, wouldn't it?
And if you're McCarthy, do you really want to do that for a year? Or you could say, Kirk, why don't you come in here? You're the guaranteed starter for one season.
That's an option. Options again. Or he retires and goes to CBS.
He could. All right, dudes. There's your batch of latest Vikings news. Latest Vikings news. And then I think we'll take another stab at the off-season blueprint, little 2.0 tomorrow, if you guys are down for that. Mm-hmm. Where we go through the entire Vikings off-season and play front office. And we can mix some of those in on Thursday, too, so that we have, him, like, guiding us through the mock draft, like players in the 5th round that we don't know if they're actual players or fake players. We have no idea. But he does. And then, check out Thor Talks Purple 5 days a week with the Senior Bowl coming up next week, too. So full draft season ahead here. We do not take a pause in the offseason. 365 days a year here on Purple Daily. Thank you, guys. If you haven't, click that subscribe button, the like button on the YouTube channel, and we'll catch you tomorrow. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.